This is the hour we stand, this is the hour we fight. Not the hour for cowards, time to fight for our rights. And I ain't running no more, I'm standing 10 toes down. Too much at stake right now, except for blood in the ground. Pick a side, no more, straddling the fence. You either hot or cold, you either bashful or bold. Brother Cliff, BVM, best believe that I've been listening. The rebirth of a movement, Black Power, revisit. Black Power, we back. You either lion or lamb. Black Power, we back. You either foe or fam. Black Power, we back. Make sure that you're listening. Black Power, we back. Black Power, revisited. What?
Here at Black Power Revisited, I am talking with none other than Roland Martin. Of course, you know him from his current show, Roland Martin Unfiltered. You know, we've known him from Tom Joyner, from the networks, from CNN. You've seen him all over the place. And so, again, just so pleased to be joined by Roland, somebody who's really been an inspiration to me just in terms of his consistency and constantly speaking to our issues. And, you know, nobody does it like him. Roland, thank you so much for being here, man.
Man, glad to be here.
So we're going to get right into it, right? The name of the show, Black Power Revisited. So we'll be talking a lot about Black Power. And where I like to start is first by just asking folks, like, how you got involved in building Black Power, or how you got involved in social justice, racial justice. You know, different people have different on-ramps. Some people are born into it. Some people discover it late in life. What was the moment? What was the key thing for you that made you say, you know, I want to dedicate my life towards, you know, uplifting my folks?
Well, it's always been the case for me because I grew up in Houston. My parents, who never went to college, but they were probably the best example of what you call community organizers, meaning we grew up in Clinton Park in Houston. Clinton Park was one of the first master plan communities for Blacks from HUD. And my grandparents migrated from Opelousas, Louisiana to Houston. My parents, they joined with some other people and a handful of people. I mean, no more than 5 or 6. And they said, you know what, you know, we need to fix our community. We need to petition to make things better. And so then they started meeting, and there were people in our neighborhood who said, oh my goodness, you know, this thing is going to fail. What are y'all doing? Y'all wasting your time. But they said, hey, you know, this matters. And so all of a sudden they focused on trash pickup, and they were like, hey, you know, we need stepped up police patrols. We were having drug problems in our neighborhood. And so they were like, okay, who's the commander for the area? And then it was like, hey, you know, we need new lights, and we need new sidewalks and sewer systems. And how does that work? And so they going down to City Hall, and was a bond initiative. Well, we want to get that on the bond initiative. And then my mom started working because of their work. And then all of a sudden she started being involved with the Metropolitan Organization. TMO in Houston is a nonpartisan faith-based group that is about community empowerment. And my mom ended up becoming one of the 3 citywide co-chairs. And I remember traveling with her when on the bus going to Austin for protests and things along those lines. And so here were ordinary people, folks who didn't go to college, but who wanted to make the neighborhood better. Fast forward 10 years, man, and guess what? You know, the building that was an old fire station was a senior citizen center. We had new street lights. We had paved streets. We had a new sewer system. Clinton Park, the park had gotten refurbished. So I saw with my own eyes what happens when people join together. They don't worry about critics, and they change their neighborhood. They were not in the newspaper. They were not on the megaphone. They were not, but they were true community organizers. And I saw them work on political campaigns, and they ran phone banks, and then they put up yard signs. And of course, we were free labor, so we had to do it too. So again, that was me growing up. Now, my parents, my dad turned 74 in April. My mom be 74 in November. Dude, they've been working the polls for years. They worked in Houston. They moved to Dallas. We had a house there because they retired. And I said, y'all can live in my house rent free. And dude, they're running polls. And so then my sister, she's working with them. Then her daughter. So what I'm describing and this is people who are listening need to understand. You know, they see you, they see Latasha, they see y'all in the New York Times, they see y'all on television and all sort of stuff like that. Well, they don't understand what makes movements real are what I call ordinary people who are doing extraordinary things, who care about their neighborhoods, and they put in the time and the investment. And so that's what I saw. That's what I experienced. I remember being a kid, and I think I was junior high school, maybe a freshman in high school, and I went with my parents and I testified at City Hall about them not cutting pool hours when there was a budget shortfall. And I remember, Ernest McGowan was a city councilman in our area. And I was born and raised in a Catholic church, and that was found in my grandparents' living room. And I remember he came there, and I jammed him up. And he looked at me like, who the hell is this little kid asking me all these damn questions? Well, my dad watches news. He watches more news now even than I do. He watched 5-6 hour news a day. So I grew up seeing parents care about the community. And so that has always been my frame of reference. And then when I decided to go to Jack Case High School, Magnet School of Communications, I said to be a journalist. I took that grounding and applied it to media, which is why the type of media work that I've done has always been there. So the work that I'm doing right now with Byron Allen and these other Black-owned media folks is about ending the economic apartheid in Black-owned media. So it's no different than what y'all are doing with voting. It's no different with Reverend Dr. Barber doing the People's Campaign. It's the same thing. How do we achieve freedom in America?
My oh my! So let's go a little bit deeper on that, because that was actually going to be my next question. You've kind of addressed part of it, but the next question is, what does Black Power mean to you? And you've already kind of went there in terms of talking about how using communications is a version of Black Power, telling those stories, controlling the narrative, right?
Yes,
is a part. So you tell me, I don't want to answer it for you. You tell me, what does Black Power mean to you?
March 16th, 1827, the first Black newspaper was founded. It was called Freedom's Journal.
Mm-hmm.
In their lead editorial on the front page, this is what they wrote: "We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us." That is the mantra of the Black press. You work for a Black paper, you basically have memorized that. And so what people have to understand, I've been saying this for years, that if you look at anywhere in the world when there is a coup, when folks are trying to take over the government, the first thing they get control of are the guns.
Right.
The second thing they get control of, the media.
That's right.
Because that's who's speaking to the people. So that's why now in countries, in Turkey, what do? They shut down the internet. That's why it used to be they took over the radio stations, the TV stations, the newspapers, because that's how they communicate with the people. If people go listen to Dr. King's speech in Montgomery after the Selma to Montgomery March, he references a book where he said the Bourbon class was angered when freed slaves and poor whites begin to align, and they begin to change things. He said the Bourbon class was angered by that. He said, so that what they then did was, and King says this, he said they used the media to drive a wedge between poor whites and freed slaves. He said, and that is what ended that populist movement of them aligning. Ever since then, that has been the case. So when you study media, when you see these white conservatives out here, especially these white evangelicals, they have been led and driven by the craziness on conservative talk radio. Fox News, now Newsmax, now OWN, then Breitbart. And so media serves as a vehicle. So if you want to lie to the people, you can lead them down the path of lies. If you want to lead them the truth, you can do that as well. And so that's been the problem. So if people go watch the documentary that Skip Gates did, and he visited the Jim Crow Museum, is at a university in Michigan. And I never forget what a brother said: there's been no group of people in the history of America who have been consistently assaulted by media than Black people. He said it has happened over a longer period of time than any other group in American history. So we were assaulted by magazines, by newspapers, radio, television, and now the internet. And so the reason the psyche of Black people is what it is It is because we have been so debilitated, degraded through media that white supremacy even has us thinking and believing that we are less than, even when we're talking to one another.
Come on now.
So that's why people can't overlook why media matters. They can't overlook why the person who is speaking, but more importantly, the person who is behind the scenes deciding what's the news and what to show. How long will we take this news conference? How many days will we give it to it? See, that's the thing. Those who are in control, those who are in these positions, they are the ones who are determining and shepherding the narrative and controlling it. So you look at the history of black folks, and you look at the Chicago Defender and A.I. Scott and the Atlanta Daily World, and you look at Claude Burnett and his Negro Associated Press. What they did was they were able to offer a counter narrative. John H. Johnson, Negro Digest, Ebony and Jet. So white America could not determine everything for black folks. And so there was alternative news. Folk got to understand the federal government literally threatened to shut down black newspapers during World War II and charge them with treason because they were writing about the racism that black soldiers were experiencing. Think about that. They were threatened. They said, no, y'all are causing dissension. The federal government was not angered by the racism. They were angered that the black papers were reporting on the racism. That's right. Why people look it up, called Double V. Victory at Home, Victory Abroad. The black papers, Pittsburgh Courier and the others, led the effort during World War I and World War II to say, we will fight fascism abroad and at home. Black people would not be where we are today were it not for black media. And here's my last point. Dr. King gets assassinated. They have his funeral. White media says we not going to allow Ebony and Jet to be in the pool, to be in the press pool. Lerone Bennett, Simeon Booker, they go to Coretta Scott King. Now, mind you, Bennett and King went to Morehouse together. Coretta Scott King says if Ebony and Jet is not allowed into the press pool, there will be no press pool. The reason Monetta Sleet became the first African-American to win the Pulitzer Prize for that iconic photo of Bernice laying on Coretta Scott King's lap, it was because Coretta Scott King said, unless Ebony and Jet is in that press pool, nobody will be allowed into the church. So that's how that happened. That's the power of media.
Right, that's right. Along those same lines, especially as you talk about Ebony and Jet, and if we think about what some people would say as the origins of the modern civil rights movement. A lot of people say the bus boycott. Some people say, well, if not for Emmett Till, right, that we may not have even had the Montgomery bus boycott. And so, but Jet Magazine, through the courage of Emmett's mother, it was Jet Magazine that published the images.
Jet Magazine, the Chicago Defender.
Right.
And what happened was, I remember a couple of years ago, Doris Kearns Goodwin was on Meet the Press. And she tried to give the New York Times credit for putting it on. And I tweeted immediately, no, hell no, Doris. You not going to rewrite the story of trying to give the New York Times credit for that happening. Now, if you read the Pulitzer Prize winning book, The Race Beat, it talks about the role the black press played. And then, of course, when white media came in, when it became so unsafe for black media to report on civil rights, but it was black media that was there before everybody else showed up.
That's right.
And the reason I'm saying that is because I've run 3 black newspapers, news editor of Black America Web. I was founding editor of BlackAmericaWeb.com, Tom Jonas' website, news editor of Savoy Magazine, produced for major broadcasting cable network, written for the Dallas Examiner, written for Essence, for Ebony. What I'm doing right now is my 13th black media experience. I've been asking for a year to get an interview with Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Speaker Nancy Pelosi won't do black media. Now, you want black votes.
Right.
But you can't talk to black media. My whole deal is, how you got so much time for MSNBC? Now, here's what's crazy. I've had Senator Chuck Schumer on my show 4 times in the last year.
Hmm.
I had every major Democrat